Hello. The topic today is conjunctions, which, as you can see in the subtitle, are joining words. You may also perhaps know these as connectives, which is a term used in British primary, secondary schools now often. Maybe not your school, but I know it's used sometimes. It means the same thing. You'll know what I'm talking about when you see some examples, if you don't already know, of course. The term conjunctions and other terms that we've used, you may be wondering, for example, why do we talk about personal references instead of pronouns, and so on, some of the terminology. You may wonder why it's different. I'm using the terms from this book, Cohesion in English, which is by MAK Halliday and Hasan. This is a very well-known book in linguistics and language, and these two writers introduced a lot of these terms, either made them up on their own or gathered up things that other people had been writing about in order to put it all together in one book that discusses these properties of cohesion, things like reference, substitution, ellipsis, and now today conjunctions, right? I don't typically ask you to read this book, any parts of it, although you may see it in the list of references in some of my PowerPoint presentations, because I find it's not the easiest book to read, frankly. It's much easier and just as valuable to look at books that I do recommend, like Introducing Functional Grammar by Thompson and Bluer and Bluer, and other books that you will know from the reading list. So there's nothing wrong with reading those books. They're comprehensive, and just as I said, they have, I think, better examples and clearer writing. But this book is certainly, the one in front of you, Cohesion in English, is certainly the most influential. So at least you know the name, and you know Halliday and Hasan, and that's good enough for now, right? So, as you know, we're talking about cohesive properties of texts, reference, substitution, and ellipsis. Now add down here conjunction, right, at the same level as those other properties, reference, substitution, ellipsis. Conjunctions, here's an example, right, coming up. Now, say you've got something like this, right, followed the battle. You know that this is not complete grammatically, right? It feels wrong. Whether you can explain that or not doesn't matter. You could, of course, say that followed is a verb, and because it's got followed, the ed at the end, it's clear that it's a declarative in terms of grammar, right? It's a statement, and declarative needs subjects, so there needs to be something before followed, and it's also the meaning of the word follow. You need something to do the leading and something to do the following. So in terms of semantics, meaning, you need something that did follow the battle, and in terms of grammar, you need a subject here, right? And again, whether you could explain that or not is not the point. Most people who speak English would understand that followed the battle is not enough information to make a complete clause, right? So you'd need something like this: a snowstorm followed the battle, and then you'd know that there were two events, a battle and a snowstorm, and the battle happened first and the snowstorm followed it, right? Good. It's got that meaning in followed occurred later in time. Now, and the things down at the bottom here are what I just said. Another way to do that is to introduce conjunctions, right? After the battle, there was a snowstorm, right? Now we don't have the time relation built into the word follow. It's marked as a separate word, right? We've got the battle, the snowstorm, and we know about the time relation because of the word after. And it could be done this way, and it could be done this way. Two separate sentences, but the time relation is still clear, right? So in all of these cases, after, and afterwards, the time relation comes from the conjunction, right? After and afterwards are conjunctions in this definition, right? It comes from the conjunctions, not from something built into the word followed, not from something built into another word. It's a word that on its own, after, is designed to show you that time relation, designed to show you now look at the word conjunction. You know, a junction means an intersection, right? And con means with, right? Like chili con carne means chili with meat, right? So you've got a conjunction is a with junction. It's something about showing how one thing joins with another. Well, that's what after does, right? It shows, if you look at the first, if you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth one there, you've got two clauses. They had fought a battle, and you've got the clause, it snowed, right? Those are two separate clauses, right? Subject, they, verb, had fought, subject, it, verb, snowed. You've got two separate clauses, after they had fought a battle and it snowed, but the conjunction after shows you how those two, they had fought a battle and it snowed, join together. Well, first of all, it shows you that they are joined, and second, it tells you how, right? Well, in this, it tells you that they're joined in terms of time, right? That there's a time relation. So that's what conjunctions do. They join two clauses, and they tell you about, they give you more information about how the two clauses should be joined. There are four types. In this case, we're just talking about conjunctions of time, right? They're telling you that there's a joining of clauses in terms of a time relation. You could describe all of these. This is the previous example, right? The previous page, rather. Now, you could describe the first four in terms of, well, like I've done here, using grammatical terms, right? Like when you see the relation between snowstorm and the battle in the blue sentence comes from the structure, right? Comes from the meaning of the word followed and the fact that it's organized with snowstorm as the subject and battle as the object. That tells you which one comes first, right? And obviously, as you see here, the subject is first in the sentence, but that doesn't mean it happened first in time, right? You know that this means the battle happened and the snowstorm happened next, right? Other ways of organizing things in terms of time. Again, these are from the previous page, and I'm just giving you more detail if you want it, but this is not the main purpose of this talk, right? You can use a prepositional phrase after the battle, where it's a phrase, the battle, a noun phrase, and then it's got that preposition after the battle. You can use a full clause in green, they had fought a battle. That's a clause, but notice it says dependent clause because or the writer used the word after, which makes it dependent, right? Dependent here, can you see what that means? If I tell you it snowed, that's enough, right? If I tell you it snowed, you'd be able to understand that that's grammatically complete. That is independent. If I tell you after they had fought a battle, you'll be waiting for more, right? It's got a clause, they had fought a battle, but because of after they had fought a battle, you'll think, yeah, what? Right? That's what a dependent clause means. It's got a full clause, but it's not enough on its own because of something like after, which is called a dependency marker, which marks it as dependent, right? You could think of other examples, right? Since we talked last week, right? We, subject, talked, verb, so that's a clause. It's got a subject and a verb, but because of the since, you'll be feeling like I need to give you some more, right? So all of those cases, you've got various ways of doing this, and they're all within, notice the blue, the red, and the green, they're all within one sentence. In the cases of the purple ones, what you've got is nothing joining those two sentences, right? You've got two separate sentences. They fought a battle and it snowed. And there's nothing there. If you just had those two sentences, they fought a battle, it snowed, you wouldn't know if that means that it happened at the same time or one happened after the other. The relationship wouldn't be clear. But the conjunction here, afterwards or first, either one's possible, makes that time relation clear and shows you that you should then see these two sentences as joined, right? If you just had they fought a battle and it snowed, you'd probably assume they're joined because we generally read things and assume that the writer, or listen and assume the speaker is trying to make sense. We don't go around assuming that we just have random sentences placed together, right? We look for sense, which is fine. So you'd probably look for some sense, and they fought a battle, it snowed. But with they fought a battle afterwards it snowed, or they fought a battle first it snowed, the writer is making it clear that these should be taken as joined, right? So that's what the conjunction does. It allows the writer to contribute to the text by making any relationships between clauses clear in various ways. Again, here we're just looking at one way in terms of time. The only link, right, as it says, the conjunction first or afterwards is the only link between the two sentences. There's no otherwise, there's no reason to see, battles and snow or fighting and snow don't really have anything to do with each other, right? That's not necessary that battles have snow or whatever. So, but once the author adds a conjunction, it makes it really clear. I'm supposed to see these as related. As I said, conjunction, right? It seems to indicate a connection to cohesion because they both mean with, right? Con with, co-worker, someone you work with. I hope that makes it clear that as a reminder that one form of cohesion is conjunction. As I said before, you may have heard a different term before, connective. That's fine. It's not wrong. I'm going with the terms that are used by people who write about this, Thompson and so on, Halliday and Hasan, and so on. Okay, now look, so how does this work in a more slightly longer example, right? Read this to yourself. Now you would probably read that and assume, because again, you assume that people writing things, saying things are trying to make sense. So you'd probably assume that these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things happened in order, right? 5 things, yes. I handed Paul, he drank, he handed it, I drank, I hung it, right? There's 5 things happening there because there's 5 verbs. You'd probably assume that they happened in that order, which is perfectly logical, right? Why wouldn't they happen in that order? As we read, we tend to think that we're following a narrative and that the things we read happen in order. Fine. The writer could choose, or speaker, could choose to make this more explicit. Could use conjunctions like after that, and then, and next, and finally, in order to make the time sequence clear. And these mostly mean the same thing, right? After that, then, next. They all say that there are 2 things happening and that one of them happened before the subsequent one. Fine. Finally is a little bit different, right? Because it tells you that 2 things happened and one happened before the subsequent one, and that the subsequent one is the last one in the series, so finally has a little more information. So conjunctions are sometimes interchangeable in the sense that they mean the same thing. Sometimes, as with finally here, it's got a little more information packed in than next, right? So we have the same story here. I handed Paul the canteen of water, but the writer has chosen to use conjunctions in order to make the time sequence clear. Good. Both are possible, use the conjunctions or not. Like I said, an author could just rely on you assuming that these things happened in sequence, or she or he could add the conjunctions in order to make it clear. Sometimes that clarity is not necessary. Sometimes we use conjunctions to eliminate ambiguity when it may be not entirely clear. And you can see here that the reason I'm giving you this example is to say, like, you don't have anything else here, right? I mean, you just got a bunch of X's to represent words. You don't have anything else, but the word then would make the link between the 2 sentences very obvious, right? You would, just from seeing this, you're going to assume, 2 or more things happened, and the one happened before the other. The then really contributes to that clarity. But it's fine. I'm saying this because sometimes people say, Sean, couldn't I take the conjunction out here? Yes, of course. That's the way conjunctions work. They can often, pretty much always, be removed, and the sentences will still be grammatical. The conjunctions, therefore, don't contribute to the grammaticality of the sentences. They contribute to your understanding of the relation between sentences in terms of time and other ways. Again, still just focusing on time, other ways are to come. The author here has explicitly indicated the time sequence instead of just saying, I handed Paul the canteen, he drank the water, where it's implicit, right? I mean, you could obviously figure that out. You can't drink the water until you have the canteen. So in terms of your understanding of the world, how the world works, it would be obvious there that it had to happen in that order. But putting then in allows the author to make it even more clear, which can be useful for things like this, which for me kind of, I mean, it's something I took from a description of a cricket play. Now, I don't follow cricket. So if it said Gooch took 3 4s off Matthews in 4 balls, he pulled Reed for 4 with a pistol crack to reach the elusive century. If I just had those 2 sentences, I might not know if that's 2 things that happened at the same time, or if he pulled Reed actually happened first, and that's what contributed to Gooch took 3 4s off Matthew. I mean, I don't know what this is going on here, but putting then in really makes it clear that one happened before the other, and that's where an author would often choose to add a conjunction in order to contribute to the reader's understanding, to contribute to the clarity of his or her writing, or speaking again is always possible too. As I wrote here, even if you don't follow cricket, then makes it clear that there's a time sequence. So it does help contribute to your understanding of the text. Let's look at some other types of conjunction. Now, I didn't use the word yet. I just kept saying time, and the spellings are coming up, right? But time conjunctions, then, next, after that, first, finally, those are called temporal conjunctions. Temporal is Temporal. Temporal is the adjective meaning to do with time. Those are temporal conjunctions. Here we have some adversative conjunctions. We have things like he fell asleep in spite of his discreet comfort, right? Although he was very uncomfortable, he fell asleep. He was very uncomfortable, nevertheless he fell asleep. Can you guess at what adversative means from in spite, although, and nevertheless? Right? This tells you, an adversative conjunction tells you that the 2 clauses are linked, but that they're linked in an adversative way. Adversative meaning unexpected, unusual, right? If you are greatly discomfortable, then it's less likely that you would fall asleep. So you can read this as his great discomfort, surprise, he fell asleep. Or in the second one, he was very uncomfortable, unusual, he still managed to fall asleep, right? That's what an adversative conjunction is. The most basic form of adversative conjunction is but, right? Whenever you use but, you're saying there's a relation between A and B, clause A and clause B, but there's something unusual or unexpected, right? I might say, oh, I've met you before, but I forget your name, right? So I've met you before, surprise, unusual, I don't remember your name. I'm admitting I should know your name. That's what it's a way of doing, right? It's saying, I've met you before, I should know your name, surprise, I don't. With the purple one, like the previous one, the conjunction, like the previous purple example a few slides back, when you've got 2 sentences that are separate, he was very uncomfortable, full stop, nevertheless he fell asleep. There's no grammatical continuation between the 2 sentences, right? The first 2 examples, he fell asleep, and although he was very uncomfortable, those 2, you have grammar linking linking the entire clause, right? With he was very uncomfortable, full stop, nevertheless he fell asleep. There's no grammar linking the 2, but the nevertheless shows you that you the reader should take these as cohesive, that you should see them as joined. And as I point out, he is also a link that you know as a personal reference. That's another link. There's no rule that there can only be one link between clauses. Here we have an adversative conjunction, nevertheless, and a personal reference, he, that both provide links between these 2 parts of the text. That is seen again here, something like this. They fought a battle, after that it snowed, where you've got the conjunction after, the temporal conjunction after, and that, the demonstrative reference, right, the selective demonstrative reference, right, they fought a battle, after they fought a battle, it snowed. Of course, it would be silly to repeat the whole first clause. We just use that to point back at it, and we use after to show the time relation. And so on for this one. Sorry, I thought there was a third, my mistake. And so on for this one, right? Same sort of thing. You could say it yourself by now, I'm sure, right? Despite is an adversative conjunction that shows an unexpected relation between his discomfort and his falling asleep. And this is a demonstrative reference that points back at him being very uncomfortable, right? He was very uncomfortable. Surprise! He was very uncomfortable. He fell asleep. It's how your brain would be interpreting that as you read it. Words that act as conjunctions. You do not need to write down or remember all of them. It's not possible. If you look in a book like Cohesion in English by Halliday and Hasan, there are literally, in the true sense of the word, dozens of conjunctions, right? Remembering them all is not productive. Even remembering these terms, basic conjunctions, compound adverbs, and prepositional expressions is not productive. Don't bother memorizing that. It's not necessary. I just want you to see that these are all conjunctions, right? Some of them are very simple, words like but, and so, and then. Some of them are longer and wordier, but perform the same function, right? Look at under basic conjunctions, the second one says so, right? I was late, so I missed the bus. I was late, so I missed the bus. Now compare that to number 3, the first one, as a result of that, right? I was late, so I missed the bus. I was late. As a result of that, I missed the bus. The meaning is the exact same, right? I was late, so I missed the bus. I was late. As a result of that, I missed the bus. Sometimes people just use the longer ones to sound clever, to sound, to be wordier, maybe trying to fill a word count or something, or to sound more, well, to sound, like I said, to sound clever when giving a speech or what have you, but it doesn't change the meaning of the word. As a result of means so. It's not always the case that they mean the same thing, as we saw with something like next and finally earlier, where finally means a little more than so. Many times, two different conjunctions mean the same thing, and it's just a stylistic choice as to which you use. And by stylistic, I mean, do you want to use a plain, simple style and say so, or do you want to use a more wordy, perhaps overly wordy style and say as a result of that? You've heard this kind of thing before, right? What's the difference between saying now and at this point in time, right? One's just a lot more words that means the same thing. Look at, look at how we have here what I just said, right? The captain had steered a course close into the shore. As a result, they avoided the worst of the storm. As a result of this move, they avoided the worst of the storm. As a result of his caution, they avoided the worst of the storm. The first part of that, the first phrase, everything up to the comma in number 1, 2, and 3, really mean the same thing. It would be fine to use the first one. The second and third would be a stylistic choice, as I said, right? Like, if you want to make it clear that you think this was cautious, you might use number 3 as a result of his caution to emphasize that. But readers, either way, would see the relation between the captain had steered a course close into the shore and numbers 1, 2, and 3 because they have the conjunction. Now, can you, by looking at this conjunction as a result, can you think for yourself, right? This is not temporal, right? This is not a temporal conjunction. It's not telling you about the time. It's not adversative. It's not an adversative conjunction. It's not telling you that the two clauses are surprisingly related. Just thinking for yourself again, what would you call this, right? And to make it simpler, put in the word so. The captain had steered a course close into the shore. So they avoided the worst of the storm. What would so, or as a result of this move, what relationship is it showing you between the two clauses? I'm pausing here while you think, but of course you can push pause. This is a causal conjunction. Causal, not clausal. Clausal means to do with clauses. Causal means to do with causes. It's Causal, causal. And don't mix it up with Casual, which is casual. People often their spell check or they go too quickly and they write casual conjunction when they mean causal, a conjunction that shows that one clause caused the other, right? The captain steered a course close into the shore. This is the cause. They avoided the worst of the storm. That is the effect. And as a result is the causal conjunction. I've given you 3 types: temporal conjunctions, adversative conjunctions, causal conjunctions. The last one is additive conjunctions, which is and, in other words, like and. This is the simplest of conjunctions for the most part, because all that and does is show that there is a connection between 2 clauses and nothing else, right? Temporal says there's a connection in terms of time. Causal says there's a connection in terms of cause and effect. Adversative says there's a connection in terms of unexpected, surprising, unusual elements. Additive says there's a connection between them. And that's the end. Is that useful? Sometimes, as we'll see, right? Sometimes it's not needed, sometimes it is. You can say, I like coffee, I like tea. Yep. Or you can say, I like coffee and I like tea. Does the and really contribute? Probably not, right? Other cases, it can still contribute, despite the fact that it only says, see, please, you reader, that these 2 clauses are connected. Adds the second to the first, doesn't tell us anything else, right? I said tea first, it doesn't mean I like tea better, right? It just says these are 2 connected clauses. Look here at a more elaborate example from Alice in Wonderland. I wonder if all the things move along with us, thought poor puzzled Alice. And the queen seemed to guess her thoughts, for she cried, faster, don't try to talk. People seem to use these probably without thinking about it. I mean, they may have learned it through osmosis, learned it implicitly by seeing other writers do it. What do we have here? Why is the and here? I mean, wouldn't you see that these were connected? Assuming you'd been reading the story, you'd know that there was Alice, you'd know that there was the queen, and so you'd read, I wonder if all the things move along with us, thought poor puzzled Alice. The queen seemed to guess her thoughts, for she cried, faster, don't try to talk. That works, right? The and is not necessary, but it does contribute in the sense that, well, it adds the second to the first, and they're often used in a place like this where we've got 2 longer sentences, and we've got a shift from in participants, right? The first sentence is Alice doing something, thinking. The second sentence is the queen doing something, guessing and crying. And so and is often used at points like that where I'm not saying this is hugely complex, but it's more complex than I like tea and coffee, right? Where there's more complexity and a shift in the action, who's doing it. And we often see and at places like this to signal that cohesion, which of course you'd still see anyway, but that's no different than all the other examples I've given, right? Think about this. What's the difference between and here? The red and the blue. One of them, pause if you want to think for a minute. And now you're back. And now with the red one, the order doesn't matter, right? I like tea and coffee. I like coffee and tea. The order doesn't matter. With the blue one, obviously the order matters, right? That Alice did that thing first and the queen did that thing second. This is what you'll see in the reading is described as internal versus external conjunctions. All of the conjunctions, adversative, additive, temporal, and causal, can be either internal or external. And the short version of that is that if it's internal, it means the order doesn't matter. If it's external, it means the order matters. Now, how do you remember this? How do you do this? Well, think of it as internal to your mind, right? In sentence A, I like tea and coffee. Why are they in that order? I don't know. It's whoever wrote it or said it. It was internal to her or his mind. He chose to say I like tea and coffee or I like coffee and tea. Something inside suggested to that person that he should say I like tea and coffee or I like coffee and tea. In the second one, the order matters, right? If you reverse these two, the queen seemed to guess her thoughts, for she cried, "Faster, don't try to talk." And thought poor puzzled Alice, I wonder if all the things move along with us. That would change the meaning. The order matters there. So think of external there as being out in the world. Internal is in your mind, external is out in the world. If it's internal, the order doesn't matter except maybe internally to the person who said it or wrote it. If it's external, it matters out in the world that they are in that order or the reader won't understand. Internal conjunctions, other examples, I think there's some coming up, but if I say, I like, if you say, do you like bicycling? I say, yes, I like, if you ask me, Sean, do you like cycling? I could use no conjunctions. Yes, it's healthy, it's fun, it's inexpensive compared to a car. It's healthy, it's fun, it's inexpensive compared to a car. Or I could say, yes, it's healthy, next, it's inexpensive, and it's fun, right? I could use conjunctions, next and. But the order there doesn't matter, right? I didn't say that the first one was the most important reason, right? All I said was it's fun and it's healthy. Next, it's good for your health, fun. I forget the three things I said, sorry. But I could present them in any order and it may be internal to me. Why did I say fun and healthy and cheap and not cheap and fun and healthy? You don't know. But if I wanted to use those same conjunctions, right? It's fun, next it's healthy. If I use those, that would be internal, it's in my mind. But if you say, how do you cycle to your house? And I say, go down this road, next turn left. That conjunction next would be external. You have to do it in that order. Go down this road, next turn left. If you don't do it in that order, you won't end up at my house, right? If you turn left and then go down this road, you won't end up at my house. So when thinking about internal and external, you have to think about that. Is the presentation here in order that matters in the outside world, like the blue one, then it's external. If not, it's the author's choice as to how to organize these, then it's internal. There's more about it in the reading, and there's at least one more example coming up, and in the practice, of course. I'm saying this because I realize sometimes this is a bit tricky. Maybe not for you, it certainly was for me when I started. I don't mean to insult you and say you don't get it. Additive conjunction and, so as we saw, it often occurs when there's that shift in participants. I said this, but now it's written. And we see it here when there's a shift from what is the and doing here? A shift from dialogue to narration. You'll see that in novels a lot. We've got the dialogue. While you're refreshing yourself, I'll just take the measurements. That's dialogue. And then we have the story itself. The queen took a ribbon out of her pocket. So you see an and there. Not that you have to, but it happens regularly. Shift from dialogue to narration. Now, a thing that always matters, and matters with and. We use and so much, right? And you may have thought of this already. Good. You have to look at the function of the word, not the form, right? I like tea and coffee is an additive conjunction. Those are two things that are presented as equal. I like tea and I like coffee equally. I'm not saying anything about one or the other being better. That is an additive conjunction. But what about here? I went home and I had dinner. This is different, right? You realize that these can't, if you change the order of these, it changes the meaning. Right? In this case, I had dinner at home. If I say I had dinner and I went home, well, I had dinner somewhere other than at home. Here, you should not say that and is an additive conjunction. I went home and I had dinner. That and is, the form is A and D, but clearly the function is as a temporal conjunction. It's telling you about a time sequence. I went home, then I had dinner. That's what it means, right? So that's part of the reason earlier where I said don't think, well, first of all, there's too many to memorize, but memorizing them is not useful because what you have to do is think about his actual function. I went home and I had dinner is not the same as I had dinner and I went home. So therefore, that's a temporal conjunction, and it's external because that order means something, right? The I had dinner and I went home, putting those in different order changes what happens in the, or what's described as happening in the outside world. Whereas I like tea and coffee, that's an additive conjunction and it's internal. It just adds the two together and it doesn't change the meaning in the outside world in terms, you're saying, well, how could I change the meaning? It doesn't mean that I like tea or coffee better. Or is the same as and, right? Or is the other big in the sense of used a lot, or is the other additive conjunction. It adds an option. I'm not going to go through every conjunction, but or sometimes is particularly tricky because you'll read that or is an additive conjunction, but you'll say, but it's not adding. If you think of it as you only get one, do you want an apple or a banana? You may think it's not adding because I only get the apple or the banana. It's adding the option, right? Otherwise, it's very similar to and we see it in these various forms, right? Both A and B, either this or that, neither this nor that, right? These are all or forms of or where you're having options added, but it is an additive conjunction. So here's all four presented one after another in what I think are simple examples, right? For the whole day he climbed, you've got this first sentence, for the whole day he climbed up the steep mountainside almost without stopping. You could add on, and in all this time he met no one. It's just saying there are two clauses and they're added. Adversative means it's adding something but unexpected. You could probably predict now what type of sentence would be here, right? It's going to be something about mountains and not stopping, but it's got to be unexpected in relation to that. Yet he was hardly aware of being tired. Climbing all day, I would expect him to be tired. Surprise, he was hardly aware of being tired. Same sentence again, for the whole day he climbed up the steep mountainside almost without stopping. A causal conjunction. This is going to cause some effect. This cause is going to cause some effect. What's the effect? So by nighttime, the valley was far below him. Of course, he's climbed way up. That caused him to be high above the valley. Temporal, again, you could probably predict some sort of time sequence. He did this, then that happened. Well, you climb all day, dusk falls, you climb all day, you sit down to rest. So there you've got the four types of conjunctions: additive, adversative, causal, temporal, right? Think about a couple of ones here where I said, think about the form and function. It's too bad you failed, and you were doing so well until now, and looks additive. But is that what it is here? I hope that if you think about that for a while by pausing and then coming back, you'll be able to see that that should be read as an adversative, right? What's the adversity? What's the unexpected result? You are doing well. Expectation, you will do well. You are doing well. Surprise, you failed. The and is adversative in this case. Here are some further examples of additive conjunctions where they do a little more than just adding, right? I said and just adds. It's adding something, but like with or adding an option, in other words, adds a different way of saying something. For instance, adds an example. So it's a little more complex than me just saying and is purely additive. It joins two things. It joins two things, but you do have options to be a little more specific and tell the reader something about what is being added. Large countries need to spend more on infrastructure. Take Canada, for instance. Someone reads that and they see that, the take Canada should be added to the previous clause, but not just added as an example of a large country that needs to spend more on road infrastructure. Adversative, I'm just showing a few more longer examples with what I hope are clearer explanations, right? If Dad loves cheese, then one would expect that he loves all cheeses. But unexpected, if Dad loves European cheeses, one would expect he loves all of them. Unexpected, well, French and Swiss ones, not necessarily cheeses from other parts of Europe, and to an extent Italian ones. Well, there are other parts of Europe. The person is correcting herself, himself, whoever's talking, right? And saying, Dad loves European cheeses. Surprise, I don't really mean all of Europe. I mean certain parts of Europe. Casual, we've got cause and effect. Sorry, I just said casual. Causal, we've got cause and effect. Sometimes it just has to do with the organization, right? What's the difference between because and so? It's only the way you choose to, do you want the cause first or the effect first, right? If you want to put the effect first, use because. If you want to use the effect second, you use so, right? In both of these, the cold is the effect. Sorry, in both of these, the cold is the cause, the effect is wearing a jacket. Otherwise, there's no difference, right? In terms of what they do, they add two things together, with one being the cause, one being the effect. It's stylistic as to which one you use because you choose, do you want the cause or the effect first? Temporal, we said, clearly it's time. A few slightly more nuanced, like with these previous slides, versions are available than then. Just then usually means right at that time, not really next, but very closely next, right? It reduces the amount of thenness. They arrived at the meeting point, then a puppy. That doesn't really tell you how much time after, whereas they arrived at the meeting point just then. Just has that minimizing function. It reduces the then. So it tells you, yeah, the puppy came up the path later, but it was like almost instantaneous, almost simultaneous to their arrival at the meeting point. These ones here, first, second, finally, that's a good example. This is probably I should have just come to here, but so I won't bother explaining it again. But this is a good example of those signaling of order, first, second, third, but you should now be able to tell our first, second, and finally here, are those internal or external? You should now be able to say that those are internal conjunctions. Putting these in that order doesn't reflect anything in the real world. It reflects something in the author's mind. She chose to put them that way for her own purposes. Could have said it saves money, second it's healthy, finally it's fun. It wouldn't change anything for you, the listener. Good, right? The last example here, right? I mean, I hope this one, the difference between the red and the blue really makes that clear. He took the key out of his pocket. Next, he inserted it into the lock. It has to have been done in that order, right? You have to take the key out before you put it in the lock. So that is external. It happened out in the real world like that. Whereas the second next, the blue next, this is internal to the author's mind. He chose to say it this way for his own reasons, but it doesn't affect your understanding. You end up thinking there are three good things about cycling: cheap, fast, healthy. So here is your summary. I'm going to stop very soon. Here's your summary. If you remember those, and, but, so, then, that's probably all you really need, because all the other conjunctions are either synonymous, then, with next, or are synonymous but just used grammatically in a different form, like so versus because, as we saw, or have slight differences, then versus just then. But remembering and, additive, but, adversative, so, causal, then, temporal is really what you need to have as far as the basics of this, as far as making sure that you understand the basics of this. I'm going to scroll through a couple of examples here, and you can read them. and I think they're self-explanatory. And finally leave you with this, which is going back to what I said at first, the very first thing, but I want to bring it back now, because sometimes people say, Sean, aren't these conjunctions, it seems like in a lot of cases you could have left them out. And yes, I said that at the start, and then I find in my experiences sometimes people forget that I said that. Compare me talking and saying, since it's raining, let's stay at home, and me talking to my wife and saying, it's raining, let's stay at home. In the first case, you've got since, which is a causal conjunction. I'm telling you the cause, right? I'm telling you the rain is the cause of me wanting to stay at home rather than go for a walk or whatever. In the second one, it's raining, let's stay at home. You'd probably say, well, that makes sense, right? You'd say, Sean, I don't need a conjunction to see that that's cohesive, right? Look at the title of this slide, Cohesion with or without conjunctions. Yes, since it's raining, let's stay at home is cohesive. The conjunction contributes to that cohesion. Two people talking, it's raining, let's stay at home. You'd say, but that still makes sense. It's still cohesive and it doesn't have a conjunction. Right. Of course, you don't need it. In this case, with it's raining, let's stay at home, what's the relation between the two? How do you know that the two belong together? The short answer is people don't like rain, right? You know about the outside world. We don't rely just on words that people say or write to make sense of things. We look at how those words are affected by the context. Well, in the context, with the text, right? In the context of rain, most people don't like it and so would prefer not to go for a walk if it's raining and thus would stay home. So it's raining, let's stay at home makes sense because of semantics, right? Because of meaning. Rain means bad, home means warm and cozy in short form, right? The first example has that extra information, the since as a conjunction, which can contribute to cohesion, as I said right from the start, but it's not always necessary. Good. Here's your summary again, and that's the end. Thank you very much. Goodbye.